Hey guys, welcome to the Build Your Vision podcast with me, Clee Davis. It's a podcast for young and emerging entrepreneurs who are looking to build their best online business and their best life. Today, we are talking about how to constantly improve yourself. All creatives, visionaries, entrepreneurs are constantly improving themselves every day to become the best at what they do. You have to do this in order to stay in the game. Business is a game, and only the best, the most driven, and the most innovative survive. So how can I stay at my peak performance level is the question at hand. So in today's episode, I sat down with someone who is always performing at her peak. I mean that literally and figuratively. She's literally one of the best performers I've ever seen, and her name is Mallory McHenry. Mallory is a professional harpist, music educator, studio musician who's located in Austin, Texas. She's currently pursuing her doctorate at UT Austin, and she has perfected the art of constant incremental improvement every single day, and she shares with us how she goes about it in today's episode. So let's get into it. And yes, if you're wondering, this Muse Report theme song is still playing, even though I changed the name of the podcast. A new catchy theme song is on the way. I just have to write it first. But until then, I still like this one. And here we go into this episode with Mallory McHenry.
Loading.
Read all about it.
It's a case study for success.
Be teachable.
What better way to learn than to just ask?
The learning process becomes a journey.
Turning dreams into realities.
Part of execution is totally believing whatever you're doing is going to work.
What are your passions and what are your gifts? And that's where it really starts.
Chances are for taking. Take a chance on yourself.
Any and everyone is capable of being a leader.
You're not going to have all the answers immediately.
Wow.
Mentors to expose you to things that you otherwise wouldn't know.
It was all I thought about and dreamed. Like I would literally get up in the morning, practice, because I knew the time would come.
Just do it.
I'm currently a doctorate of musical arts student at the University of Texas in Austin. I also got my master's here, and I got my undergraduate degree from Oakwood University. So, Yay. I have a private studio here in Austin. I operate mainly out of Austin, and I work part-time, as well as being a full-time student.
Awesome. So Mallory is like an amazing harpist, and I'm sure I already said this in the intro, but what she does is absolutely incredible, and there's no way that she performs so eloquently and so technically sound without some type of calculated technical improvement process that she goes through before she performs on whatever stage or event that she's performing for. So first thing I want to get into is just kind of a prelude to what we're going to be talking about. Why did you choose the harp? Why?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I've been wondering this for a while.
Yeah, I haven't always been a harpist. I was actually a pianist before
Okay.
I started my little harp journey. But yeah, I saw my friend play in church one day, and I was like, that's really cool. I want to give that a shot. And my parents were actually super supportive of it. I cannot stress the importance of encouraging young people to pursue what they want to pursue and not discouraging them from, their full potential. But yeah, I started taking it, and I think the thing that drew me to it the most was the way that it sounded, and it was something different, and it was something that you didn't see all the time. And I think that's what I was looking for, something to really help me start thinking outside of the box, and something that would take me places that I didn't necessarily get to be already. So
awesome. And for an instrument that is not necessarily the most common instrument that you just see around every day, I feel like your process for what you do has to be even more exciting and intriguing. So I'm really excited to get into it. Okay, so what does the process for learning and perfecting a piece that you're going to perform look like?
It's definitely pretty daunting at times. I mean, just like with anything else, there's a process to it all. I kind of like to compare it to doing a puzzle. You find the pieces. You find the pieces that work together, you make them work together, and then it takes time and it takes a lot of effort to put them together. So my approach is with pieces, be it classical, be it jazz, be it a newer type of music, contemporary or whatnot. I have different approaches to each, which keeps my drive for wanting to continue to learn going. But I tend to make it work, and I start at square one, and of course that takes time. So, yeah.
So, okay, let's say you have a piece, a hypothetical piece. I don't know what it would be called, but you have it. It's complicated. You have a certain amount of time to learn it. What's the first step you're looking at when you're trying to break down, okay, how am I going to perfect what I'm about to do here?
Yeah. I definitely scan through it first, and I look to see what's going to be the hardest for me to learn, be it rhythmically, melodically, just a bunch of notes on the page, and I tackle that first. Getting the harder stuff out of the way gives way to being able to express yourself musically earlier on. So first off, I'll tackle the hardest stuff first, and once that's pretty much in the bag, I'm able to focus on the easier aspects of it all, and putting it together. And it's just a more enjoyable process when you remove the stress from being there at first, and then you finally get to just enjoy the process. So yeah, definitely tackling the harder sections first.
Okay, yeah, that definitely. I mean, we do that in the Aeolians like all the time. We don't necessarily learn like a piece in the order that it's written, and I think that could apply for lots of things, even in life. Like you know how you avoid the most daunting things in life, or like the things that take the most time or responsibility, the assignment that you don't want to do, the work that you don't want to do, and you avoid it and you do the easy stuff first, and then you have to think about that stuff that you have to do like in the back of your head this whole time. And I just see that relating to what you just said. Like you want to get the hardest things out of the way first, like the things that are the most challenging, and then you'll be able to like sit back and enjoy the process a lot more as you're perfecting the other little things that aren't as complicated for you.
Yeah. And just like with anything, it comes with being organized and setting specific goals for yourself when you first sit down to approach something new. Setting those goals, accomplishing those goals little by little. Of course, it takes a lot of time, and you just have to be patient with yourself. But just setting those expectations for the time that you're spending with it makes it easier from the front end rather than the back end in the long run.
Right. So, okay, you set your goals for what you want to do for the task, and you've also scanned it so you know what are the hardest pieces, what are the easier pieces, what are pieces that you already pretty much have under your fingers, and you tackle the hardest ones first. You get those out of the way. You get those measures or whatever out of the way. What do you go through next?
I definitely work on expressing what the composer's intention was for the piece. So I'll do my research. It's not always just about sitting down and playing what's written on the page, just sitting there and playing the notes. You have to know what that person that wrote that piece was thinking in that time period. You have to know what their intentions were. You have to know the history behind the time period that they were in. Like they could have been writing something in the middle of a war, and that is literally what they were expressing. They could be sitting there expressing fear. They could be expressing love. They could literally be writing a love letter to somebody. And you have to take all those things into consideration. So I definitely will sit down and I'll take the time to research what was going on and do my best to portray what that person was intending for the piece to sound like. I think that's the next step, because once all the notes are off the page, once you've learned all the notes, it's probably the most respectful thing to do.
Yeah.
And in order to portray what
you have to interpret it correctly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I'm envisioning this process in my head, and you learned the notes; those are under your hands. Now you have the interpretation, the soul, the spiritual aspect of what you're playing. You're putting that in there. I feel like there has to be like another element, I could be wrong, that you go through to make sure that it's performance ready.
Performance ready?
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, we've learned all the notes. We've pieced it all together. And now you've got to get practice with it being complete in your fingers. You've got to get it out there and express your artistry. Yeah, you have to portray what the composer has in store for the piece, but I mean, you're the artist here. You're the vessel, and you need to really put yourself out there and explore the limitations of your artistry. So definitely getting performance practice in, playing for your peers, putting your artistry out into the world, getting it up there on social media. Yeah, just I don't know, exploring other options and seeking advice.
Right.
Seeking advice on your artistry from others is also a very good thing. Be it a professor, be it a good friend who is also very experienced in your art, or just an artist in and of themselves. Having different light shed on it than what you can just offer to it is also a very good idea when it comes to performance and performance practice. Prior to the big day, I should say.
Right, for the big, the big thing. Okay, so like you do this as a professional musician. You do this over and over and over again.
Yes.
I feel like the mental fatigue would just be like, I don't know, like I don't know if I'll be able to handle this sometimes. How do you constantly like have the mental endurance to stay in that growth improvement mindset, even though like you might be tired?
Ugh, that's a good question. A very good question, because I've been through quite the whirlwind in the past 3 months.
Yeah.
It's hard. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes it's very hard. But you have to want that improvement for yourself. You have to want that state of mind that you're going to be in order to improve your own self. You have to want that for yourself. You can't have the expectations of someone else and want to improve yourself. So you have to sit down and really think that what path you want to take in order to improve. And that comes with a lot of mental preparation and mental uplifting, to be honest. For me personally, I like to keep a lot of projects going, not just ones that are required of me in order to say complete degrees, but ones that allow me to express my artistry at different levels. I like to work with composers that are my peers, and I like to create new works with them and get those commissioned and premiered so that the world has access to new music. That's something that I definitely like. It gives me excitement and it keeps me going forward, and it also opens my mind to other aspects of music that are pretty much right in front of my face, and it keeps me going. But other than that, I don't know.
You pretty much breezed through everything that I had for you. Are there certain things that you look for when trying to improve yourself, though? Because I feel like there's certain things that everyone kind of has to like to check off their list. Like this needs to be in place. This needs to be in place in order for this to be right. Yeah. So like, do you have like a criteria for that, or?
I do. at the same time, we're human. We're always gonna we're always gonna make mistakes. That's just point blank. And honestly, the sooner you realize that, the better. Because if you don't, it's gonna be a long ride for you. That's for sure. But yeah, I do have a checklist. I have a very specific way of practicing, and for me, it's a numbers game, and it's hard to explain without a visual representation of what I actually do on paper. But I do have a checklist, and every time we talked about performance practice before, but every time I do have a chance to practice performance, I have a checklist. I'm looking at my image, like my self-image, how I am looking on the stage. I'm always looking at my technique. Technique always wins. I'm always looking at my technique to see if I'm falling off, because that's something that can definitely happen in any career path. Phrasing, musicality, if it's up to par with what I want to get across, what I'm trying to portray on the stage, as well as composer's intentions. What else is there? When I'm up on stage, I have a tendency to make funny faces, so I'm always making sure my face speaks so many words. But I'm always making sure that I'm looking as professional as I can. I always want to make sure that I'm having a good time on the stage. So I do spend a lot of time recording myself, looking back on my progress. I think that's the most encouraging thing, to be honest, to see how far you've come, especially because things just take so much time. And a lot of times you can't see your own growth. You really cannot see your own growth. Until like you're watching yourself and you're like, wow, that did not sound like that, a month and a half ago. Yeah, sometimes you really can't see your own growth, but you're literally always growing. Yeah. So you have to take that into account when you are sitting there criticizing basically what you're going through, what you're working on. And you have to do it in a gentle and loving way to yourself,
Right. You don't want to be too harsh.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we could be our worst critic sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
And like literally the episode that's coming out tomorrow is pretty much talking about that exact same thing. I referred to the first podcast episode I ever released, and I'm just listening to it like, what? Why did I think this was okay to put out like to the world? Like, this is terrible.
Yep.
So I'm just like, wow, like you don't even really notice the growth until you kind of reflect on where you were before. And we're so hard on ourselves, like we're like, oh man, I'm not doing this. And that kind of goes to another thing I want to ask you. Have you ever dealt with like comparison, like comparing yourself to, I know if you're like in a conservatory, there are other harpists there are other people who are doing what you're doing, there are other musicians. Do you ever like go through a comparison crisis, or is that something that's good or a bad thing to do, or I don't know?
Yes. Short answer, yes. I have had that that happen to me. It can be healthy in ways, but for the most part, it's not the best. And especially with an experience of mine that I've had lately, I had the chance to go on the NPR show Performance Today. And when I first got notification that I was going to be able to do this,
that's incredible. Wow.
I promise you, the first thing that popped into my head was, oh my goodness, the whole harp community, the whole classical world community is going to hear me on this radio show, and they're going to have comments. It's not a pretty world out there. Yeah. When we get word of auditions that are happening, say for large city orchestras, everybody is running to those things. It's such a competitive world out there. And for your stuff to be on public domain, just out there in the world, you are opening yourself up to so much criticism. And even in the realm of education, I know the harp world isn't so big, but at the university that I'm at now, there's about 6 of us that are majors, and that's fairly large. And even within our studio, there can be a bit of healthy competition. But you can sort of look at that as self-improvement as well.
Right.
You just can't let your mindset go into, oh, I need to sit here and be better than this person to succeed at X, Y, and Z. We all have different aspects to our musicianship that make us the musicians that we are.
Right.
And we have to take bits and pieces from it without having it overwhelm our growth or overwhelm our ability to see that we are the musicians that we are because we are who we are.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, yeah. That's so applicable. I think I swear I struggle with this every single episode. I say some word that I can't say that I can normally say. Okay. So yeah, I think that applies to so many other things as well. I mean, in so many worlds, there's competition, whether you are in music, like you said, entertainment, coaching, public speaking. You're trying to sound like this person because they're getting all of this, or you're trying to be better than this person, and it just gets so crowded in your mind. And then, like for me, even with the podcast, like I'm listening to all these other podcasts. Like I'm also a listener of podcasts as well as a producer of one. And you get all these ideas. Oh, this is what they did, and this is what they did, and maybe I should form my show like this, or maybe I should copy that. And it kind of gets like unhealthy to a certain extent, because you kind of stop being yourself. But also it's a good thing because like you're taking the best of what you like in other people and applying it to yourself and then turning it into your own thing. So I think there just has to be like a healthy balance of the comparison thing. You want to be comparing, you kind of want to be competitive to just give you that edge and take the best of what they have, but you also don't want to be criticizing yourself because you aren't what they are, because you never will be.
Right. That's a very quick and easy way to just lose yourself. At the end of the day, the best version of yourself is going to open doors for you that you never even imagined could be opened. Right.
So I kind of want to start drawing to a close with this question. If you had, like a sign, a billboard somewhere, and you could say anything, and I'm going to try to stick with what we're talking about, anything when it comes to like technical improvement, being the best yourself that you can be every single day, and everyone that drove by saw their sign, what would be the one thing that you would want them to hear or read?
This is a good question. He's going to have to be a big billboard, because something I would say for sure is don't put limitations on your artistry. Don't put limitations on your goals, and don't put limitations on who you can be. Just simply being yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, like the billboards would be like, every couple 100 feet, just like.
Yeah,
Yeah, like don't be drive a little bit more. Just keep saying it. Yeah. No, but that's so good. Yeah. I think that's something everyone should uphold and try to be mindful about in their creative process.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose yourself at the end of the day, because that's what artistry is. It's you expressing what you have to offer to the world, and them reciprocating and enjoying what you have to offer as well. All right, guys, I hope you learned something from that episode with Mallory. It gets me so excited when someone approaches their specialty and it applies and draws parallels to so many other aspects of life. Literally everything Mallory said, even though she was talking about music, applies to business, art, the sciences, life in general. I'm just going to want to share with you guys some important pieces that I really don't want you to leave this episode without. So keep listening for just a little while longer, especially if you made it this far into the episode. I know you're loyal. So the first thing she really harped on was tackling the difficult task first. Do not avoid the difficult problems and wait to address them. By the time you get to those tasks, your willpower is lowered, you have less focus, your performance is less effective. do the hard things first, and that lets you enjoy the improvement process later. Also, set goals before you start. Do not go blindly into whatever you're doing. While you are in the improvement process, you also have to do your research. What's the industry doing? How are the top performers executing? What does the market look like? What do my customers want? What am I lacking? What do I need to get better at? Do your research. That is so important. And speaking of research, one of the most important types of research you could possibly have is feedback. And even Mallory said that she gets feedback on her performances. Get feedback from your clients, your customers, your supporters, and whatever you're doing. It's one of the most important pieces of information you can have. Guys, we are always growing. Whether you realize it or not right now, you are growing, especially if you're listening to this podcast, because I know you have a growth mindset if you are listening to this podcast. So comparing yourself can be positive, but take the best from your competitors and apply it to yourself. Be driven by their success, but don't necessarily try to be like them. Growth and improvement takes time. Just be diligent, apply what you learned in this episode, and your vision will begin to build itself. I'm sure of it. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Build Your Vision podcast. Click that follow or subscribe button to be notified when new value pack episodes are released. And if you really love this episode, click on the show in your library, scroll down and leave a rating or review. Please, it really helps the show. I would really appreciate the feedback. Once again, we're going with feedback. And it just makes my heart warm when I see those reviews and ratings down there, because I get to see what people like and also whether people want me to change some things as well. So thank you for listening, all my visionaries out there. I will talk to you in the next episode. Until then, keep building your vision every single day. Peace.
Well, that's the end of our MRP episode. Thank you for listening, everything, but it's time to go. We'll have a new one for you next week on the flip side. But until then, don't kill the vibe, subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure you go ahead and subscribe.